Look, I'm going to be straight with you. When I signed up for the Galactic Survey Corps, I thought I'd be fixing broken coffee machines on some quiet research station, maybe resetting a few passwords for forgetful xenobiologists. Instead, I'm standing on the bridge of the Endeavour's Pride, watching Captain Vaughn have what can only be described as a religious experience over a really big door. Behold, Vaughn announced, his 3 eyes glistening with what I'm pretty sure were actual tears. The celestial gates, the masterwork of the first ones, the threshold between known space and the infinite beyond. I took another bite of my sandwich. It was turkey, pretty good turkey, actually, Marcus Vaughn said, turning to me with the kind of gravitas usually reserved for funeral directors. Do you comprehend the magnitude of this moment? We stand before a structure that has existed for 10 million years. Empires have risen and fallen in its shadow. Wars have been fought for the mere privilege of gazing upon it. I said. So it's a big deal. Professor Helmut, the human archaeologist who treated everyone like they were personally responsible for disappointing him, shot me a withering look. A big deal. A big deal. This is the find of the millennium. The gate is said to contain the accumulated knowledge of the first ones, the progenitor species who seeded civilization across the galaxy. Neat, I said. Keelix, our hexapod engineer, was literally vibrating with anxiety, all 6 of her arms twitching independently. The legends say that whoever unlocks the gate will gain access to technology beyond comprehension, faster than light travel that doesn't require quantum tunneling, energy generation that violates thermodynamics, weapons that can unmake stars, or, I offered it could just be a really old door that nobody's figured out how to open. The silence that followed was the kind you could serve at dinner parties. Captain Vaughn's translator chip must have glitched because it took him 3 full seconds to respond. Marcus Webb, you are the ship's information technology specialist. Your role here is to ensure our computers function adequately, not to philosophize about cosmic mysteries. Sure thing, boss. The gate itself was impressive, I'll give them that. It hung in space like someone had copy-pasted a chunk of pure geometry into reality. Massive concentric rings covered in symbols that hurt to look at, or rotating slowly around a center point that was just darkness. The kind of darkness that wasn't just the absence of light, but the absence of anything. As we approached, the symbols started glowing. The entire crew gasped. I kept chewing. An interface panel materialized in front of our ship, projecting directly onto the bridge view screen. More symbols. These ones pulsing in a rhythm that Keelix insisted was mathematically significant. This is it, Professor Helmut breathed. First contact with the authentication system. Everything we've theorized about the first one's language, their mathematics, their cognitive frameworks. It all comes down to this moment. I squinted at the display. Huh, what? Vaughn demanded. Nothing. It's just. That layout looks really familiar. Familiar. Helmut's face was turning an impressive shade of purple. How could an interface designed by a civilization that predates humanity by millions of years look familiar to an IT technician from Earth? I shrugged. I don't know, man. I'm just saying it looks like every login screen I've ever seen. Professor Helmut spent the next 4 hours proving me wrong, or trying to. Anyway, he started confidently, pulling up holographic displays of his research, cross-referencing symbols from 17 different dead civilizations, running them through what he called sophisticated xenolinguistic algorithms and what I called fancy autocorrect. You see, he explained to anyone who would listen, the first ones operated on a mathematical framework based on 12-dimensional harmonic resonance. Each symbol represents not just a concept, but a quantum state entangled with the observer's consciousness. He input a sequence. The gate flashed red and made a sound like a disappointed trombone. Interesting, Helmut muttered. The rejection pattern suggests I'm close. Very close. Attempt number 17, same red flash, same trombone. By attempt 32, Helmut had removed his jacket and was muttering to himself in what I think was ancient Sanskrit. Keelix was stress-molting in the corner, leaving little patches of exoskeleton on the floor that the cleaning drones kept trying to sweep up. Perhaps, Captain Vaughn suggested delicately, we should consider alternative approaches. No, Helmut snapped. I have devoted my entire career to studying the first ones. I have published 47 peer-reviewed papers on their linguistic patterns. I will not be defeated by a simple authentication protocol. Attempt 58, red flash, trombone. That's when Vaughn made the call to bring in Kiara. She arrived via shuttle from the nearby research station, a member of the Zeta Collective, which meant she was basically 7 highly intelligent beings sharing one body and 7 connected brains. If anyone could crack the code, it would be someone who could literally think in parallel processing. Kiara examined the interface for 6 minutes in complete silence. Then she said, "No," Vaughn echoed. "No," she confirmed, all 7 of her voices speaking in perfect harmony. "This is either the most sophisticated encryption we've ever encountered, or it's something else entirely. We cannot determine which. Every standard cryptographic approach fails. Every quantum analysis returns null values. It's as if the system is waiting for something we fundamentally don't possess." "Impossible," Helmut said. "I've deciphered languages with no living speakers, translated texts from civilizations whose very physics were different from our own. And yet," Kiara said calmly, "you cannot open this door." I was sitting at my workstation in the back, running diagnostics on the ship's network, because that's what I was actually supposed to be doing. But I kept glancing at the gate's interface, and that familiar feeling kept nagging at me. The symbols were weird. Sure, alien, incomprehensible to most people. But the layout, the way the symbols were arranged in that specific pattern, the little indicator in the corner that was probably showing system status, the way the whole thing was structured, I'd seen this before, not these exact symbols, but this exact design philosophy. "Hey," I called out. Nobody heard me. "Hey," I said louder. Captain Vaughn turned, annoyed. "What is it, Webb?" "I really think that's just a login screen," Helmut laughed. It wasn't a nice laugh. A login screen. Of course, why didn't we think of that? We'll just type in the password that was set 10 million years ago by a species that evolved and died before Earth's sun finished forming. I mean, yeah, basically. Your expertise is fixing printer jams. Webb, leave the cosmic mysteries to those of us with actual credentials. Kiara held up a hand. Well, 3 hands. She had plenty. "Wait, explain your reasoning." Finally, someone with sense. "Look at the structure," I said, walking up to the view screen. "You've got your main input field here. Your status indicator here. This symbol that keeps pulsing, that's probably a cursor. And this section at the bottom, that looks like error messages." "Preposterous," Helmut said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. "Is it though? Because every time you input something wrong, that section lights up. That's an error message. Failed authentication, try again." Keelik stopped molting long enough to stare at the display with fresh eyes. Oh no. He might be right. This is just a user interface. A very old, very alien user interface. But the basic principles are the same. "Precisely," I said. "Form follows function. Doesn't matter if you're a first one or a human. If you need someone to input information, you design an interface that guides them through it. And this interface is guiding us to input a password. Then how," Vaughn asked slowly, "do we determine the correct password?" Before I could answer, Keelix accidentally knocked against a control panel with one of her nervous arms. The gate's interface flickered, turned red, and displayed a new symbol, a very specific new symbol. "What did I do?" Keelix wailed. "What did I just do?" "You triggered a security lockout," I said, reading the interface. "That's a lockout warning. 3 more failed attempts and we're probably locked out permanently." The bridge erupted into chaos. "Everyone calm down," I said, which of course made everyone panic more. Captain Vaughn was pacing back and forth, his 3 eyes spinning in different directions. "We cannot afford a permanent lockout, do you understand? Every major civilization in the galaxy has sent expeditions to this gate. If we're the ones who break it, we'll be remembered as the crew who destroyed the greatest archaeological find in history. We're doomed," Keelix moaned, molting, intensified. "We're all doomed. I'm going to be known as the engineer who broke the celestial gate. They'll teach about me in schools as a cautionary tale." Professor Helmut had gone very quiet, which was somehow more disturbing than his usual pompous rambling. He was just staring at the interface, his whole worldview clearly crumbling. Kiara's 7 minds were probably having 7 simultaneous breakdowns. "Okay," I said, cracking my knuckles. "Here's what we're going to do. We're going to treat this exactly like any other IT problem. Step 1, remain calm. Step 2, assess the situation. Step 3, try the obvious solutions." "The obvious solutions," Vaughn demanded. "We've been trying solutions for hours." "No, you've been trying complicated solutions. Nobody's tried the obvious ones." I walked up to the main console, ignoring Helmut's protests. The interface really did look like every login screen I'd encountered in 15 years of IT work. Sure, the symbols were different, but the logic was the same. Someone built this system, someone had to maintain it, and someone, at some point, had to log in. "First question," I said. "Has anyone tried turning it off and on again?" The silence was deafening. "You're joking," Helmut said. "I'm not. It's basic troubleshooting. Sometimes systems get stuck in error states and just need a reset. This is a 10-million-year-old artifact created by a civilization that achieved technological godhood, Helmut said slowly, like explaining to a child. You cannot simply turn it off and on again. Why not? Did the first ones not believe in power cycles? Keelix's trembling slowed. Actually, that's not entirely unreasonable. If this is a computer system, and all evidence suggests it is, then it must have some kind of reset function. Otherwise, any error would be permanent, and that's terrible system design. Exactly, I said. So where's the reset button? It took 20 minutes of scanning, but Keelix found it. A small panel on the gate itself, tucked away in a corner, with a symbol that loosely translated to maintenance access. Should we? Vaughn asked nervously. We're already locked out, I pointed out. What's the worst that could happen? Famous last words, probably, but I pressed the button anyway. The gate went dark. Every light, every symbol, just gone. The crew held their collective breath. Then, slowly, the symbols started lighting up again, running through what looked like a boot sequence. Status indicators flickered on. The interface rebuilt itself, line by line, and the lockout warning was gone. It worked, Keelix whispered. It actually worked. Of course it worked, I said. Now we're back to the original problem. We need a password. Which we don't have, Helmut said bitterly. Which we might not need, I corrected. Tell me something. When the first ones built this system, who did they expect would need to use it? Other first ones, presumably, Kiara said. Right, so they'd need a way for their people to access it, icily, which means the password probably isn't some impossible cosmic riddle. It's probably something simple. Something their users could remember. You're suggesting, Vaughn said carefully, that an advanced civilization that built megastructures and seeded life across galaxies used simple passwords. I'm saying that no matter how advanced you are, human nature is human nature, or first one nature, whatever. The point is, people are lazy. IT security has been fighting that battle since someone invented the first lock. I pulled up my personal tablet, which had a file I'd been keeping since my first help desk job. List of most common passwords used throughout human history, I announced. Let's start with the classics. This is absurd, Helmut muttered, but he didn't stop me. I input the first one. Password, 123, red flash, trombone. Okay, not that one. How about just password, red flash, trombone, guessed, red flash, trombone. We were down to our last attempt before another lockout. Wait, Captain Vaughn said. This is our final chance. Should we really be guessing? You got a better idea? I asked. Silence. Alright then, one more. The most common default administrative password in the history of computing. I typed, admin. The interface turned green. Every symbol started glowing in sequence. The gate's rings began rotating faster, aligning in patterns that made my eyes water. And then it opened. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. We just stood there, staring at the now open celestial gate while my brain tried to process what had just happened. Did you? Kiara said slowly, speaking with only one voice for the first time since boarding. Did you just unlock the greatest mystery in galactic history by typing admin? Yep, I said. The default administrative password. Yep. For a system built 10 million years ago, apparently, Professor Helmut made a sound like a deflating balloon. He sat down heavily in the nearest chair, which happened to be mine, and just stared into space. His entire career, 47 peer-reviewed papers, 17 academic awards, all of it rendered meaningless by a four-letter word. I need a drink, he mumbled. Captain Vaughn was frozen in a state of shock, his three eyes each processing different stages of disbelief. But, the legends, the prophecies, the chosen one who would commune with the ancient intelligence and prove worthy of the knowledge. Yeah, about that, I said, examining the no-active interface. I think the chosen one was just whoever remembered the password, or in this case, whoever knew how default credentials work. Keelix had stopped molting entirely and was now inspecting the data streaming across the screens. This is, Marcus, you need to see this. The system is granting full administrative access. File directories, system controls, network connections, everything. I pulled up a chair, gently moving Helmut aside, and started navigating the interface. It was weird, sure. Alien operating system from 10 million years ago, but the basic structure was there. Folders, files, settings, a search function that actually worked, which put it ahead of about half the operating systems I'd dealt with. So what exactly did we just unlock? Vaughn asked, recovering some of his composure. Looks like hold on. Yeah, this is a network hub. The Celestial Gate isn't just a door, it's more like a router. There are connections to, let me count, 247 other gates spread across the galaxy. 247, Kiara breathed. An entire network of instantaneous transportation. The applications are limitless. And they were all locked behind admin, I said, pulling up the security logs. Oh man. Oh, this is beautiful. Look at this. I displayed the authentication history. Thousands upon thousands of failed login attempts, stretching back millennia. Every major civilization had tried to crack it. Azorgans had spent 3 centuries on it. The Crystalline Collective had thrown their best quantum minds at it for generations. The previous human expedition had tried for 2 years straight. All of them had failed because they were trying to be clever. The irony is killing me, I said, scrolling through the logs. Every species in the galaxy approached this like it was some grand cosmic test, a puzzle designed to find the worthy, but it wasn't. It was just bad IT security. Bad security, Helmut said weakly. The first ones were gods. The first ones, I corrected, were people who apparently never attended a cybersecurity seminar. Look, there are even more default accounts, still active. User accounts with passwords like First One 123 and Gatekeeper. They never changed the defaults. They just deployed the system with factory settings and called it a day. The more I dug into the system, the funnier it got. And by funnier, I mean more horrifying from an IT perspective. No password complexity requirements, I muttered. No forced password changes. No multi-factor authentication. No account lockout policies that actually stick. This is every bad practice in one place. But they were advanced, Keelix protested. They built these structures. They manipulated space-time. Sure, they were great at engineering. Terrible at security. Those aren't the same skill set. I pulled up another file. No. Oh no. They documented everything. Documented Vaughn. Leaned over my shoulder. There's a manual. They left a manual. It's okay. I'm going to read this. The title is Celestial Gate Network Quick Start Guide. Quick Start Guide for a Cosmic Megastructure. I opened it. The first page, translated by the ship's computer, read, "Congratulations on your Celestial Gate deployment. This network allows instantaneous travel between connected nodes. Default administrative credentials are username, admin, password, admin. Important. Please change these credentials immediately after installation." The bridge was silent except for the sound of Helmut quietly sobbing. They told people to change it, I said, amazed. Right there in the manual. And nobody did it. For 10 million years, nobody changed the password. So the prophecies, Vaughn said. The chosen one, the test of worthiness, was just someone reading the manual, I finished. Which, to be fair, is more than most people do. I spent the next hour exploring the Gate-S file system while the rest of the crew came to terms with reality. Or tried to, anyway. Helmut was still catatonic. Vaughn kept muttering about the burden of truth. Kiara had gone full multi-mind and was arguing with herself about the philosophical implications. Keelix was the only one helping me, all 6 arms flying over different consoles as we mapped out the network. This is incredible, she said, momentarily forgetting her anxiety. The gates are connected via quantum entanglement, creating stable wormholes between fixed points. The power requirements alone should be impossible, but they've somehow tapped into vacuum energy at a level we can't even begin to replicate. Cool, I said, clicking through folder after folder. Hey, check this out. User complaints. User complaints. Yeah, there's a whole directory of them. Looks like the first ones had a ticketing system for network issues. They had bugs, Keelix said, wonder in her voice. The first ones deployed a galaxy-spanning network with known bugs. Of course they did. That's how software development works. You launch with bugs, promise to fix them later, then hope everyone forgets. I kept scrolling. Oh man. The code comments are gold. I pulled up what looked like system maintenance logs, complete with annotations from the original developers. This section handles the navigation calculations, Keelix read over my shoulder, and the comment says, "Why does this work? I don't know. Steve wrote this, and Steve is gone. Do not touch. Core functionality, 3 exclamation marks. Here's another one, TODO, implement proper security protocols. Current setup is temporary. Temporary from 10 million years ago. We kept digging. The more we found, the more the first ones stopped seeming like mythical precursors and started seeming like, well, people, overworked, understaffed people trying to deploy a massive infrastructure project. Found the project management records, I announced. Meeting notes from their planning sessions. Vaughn had recovered enough to be curious. What do they say? Let's see. Proposal to implement multi-factor authentication. Status rejected due to budget constraints. Proposal to add user training programs. Status postponed to Phase 2. Proposal to document the codebase properly. Status assigned to intern. Even the first ones had budget cuts, Kiara mused. And interns. Here's the best part, I said, finding a particularly juicy file. Executive summary from their final network review. I'll read it. The Celestial Gate network is now operational across all sectors. Minor security concerns remain, but leadership has decided to address these in future iterations once initial deployment is complete and user adoption increases. Expected timeline for security updates, 500 years. They postponed it, Helmut said, having apparently rejoined the conversation. They postponed basic security for 500 years, and then, I'm guessing, something happened to them before they got around to it. Keelix pulled up another set of files. Oh no. I found the incident reports. Marcus, you need to see this. The incident reports painted a picture of a civilization slowly falling apart. Not from war or disaster, but from bureaucracy and mismanagement. Project delays, funding cuts, interdepartmental conflicts. The final entries were increasingly desperate. Civilization-wide economic collapse, Keelix read. Multiple sectors declaring independence. Central government authority breaking down. Emergency meeting called to discuss network maintenance budget. And the result of that meeting, Vaughn asked, all non-essential services suspended indefinitely. The Celestial Gate network classified as non-essential pending budget review. She looked up. They shut down their own greatest achievement because they couldn't afford to maintain it, and the password, I prompted, never changed. They meant to. There are 17 different proposals to update security protocols, all stamped approved pending implementation, but implementation never happened because they ran out of money, time, and apparently, civilization. I leaned back in my chair, taking it all in. The first ones, the mythical progenitors, the civilization that every species held up as the pinnacle of achievement. They'd built wonders, and then they'd failed to maintain them because of paperwork, politics, and poor planning. There's a final message, Kiara said quietly. A file labeled last transmission. Play it, Vaughn ordered. The message was text only, no audio. The ship's computer translated it, to whoever finds this network. We are the people you might call the first ones, though we called ourselves something that doesn't translate well. We built these gates to connect our civilization across the stars. We dreamed of unity, of shared knowledge, of a future without boundaries. We failed, not because we lacked technology or ambition, but because we forgot that infrastructure requires maintenance. And maintenance requires resources, and resources require political will. The gates remain. We do not. May you learn from our mistakes. May you do better. Also seriously, change the admin password. We meant to do that. The bridge was silent for a long moment. Well, I said finally, at least they had self-awareness at the end. So there I was, Marcus Webb, former help desk technician, current system administrator of a 10-million-year-old galactic transportation network. Not exactly what I'd had in mind for my career trajectory. First order of business, I announced, pulling up the security settings. We're changing all these passwords. Is that wise? Vaughn asked. Perhaps we should leave the system as we found it. For posterity. Posterity can deal with proper security protocols. I'm not running a network with admin as the password. I have standards. I spent the next 2 hours implementing basic security measures that should have been there from the start. Complex passwords, multi-factor authentication, proper user access controls, account activity logging, the works. Keelix watched over my shoulder, taking notes. This is going to revolutionize how we think about ancient civilizations. All those legends about worthy, chosen ones and cosmic tests, none of it was real. It was just a locked door that nobody had the key for. Not even a key, I corrected. Just a willingness to try the obvious solution. Professor Helmut had gone through the 5 stages of grief and emerged on the other side as, weirdly, my biggest supporter. You know, he said, I spent 3 decades studying the first one's culture, their philosophy, their supposed transcendence to higher planes of existence. Never once did I consider they might have just been regular people who made regular mistakes. Everything's obvious in hindsight, I said, not unkindly. Indeed, though I suspect my next paper will be considerably different from my previous ones, perhaps something titled, The Myth of Ancient Perfection. Why dead civilizations coup and fix their security bugs. Catchy Captain Vaughn was busy sending reports to the Galactic Council, explaining our discovery. I could only imagine how that conversation was going. Yes, Council member, we've unlocked the Celestial Gates. How? Well, the IT guy tried admin. What? No, just the word admin. Yes, I'm serious. Kiera approached my workstation, all 7 of her minds apparently in agreement. Marcus Webb, you've rendered centuries of cryptographic research obsolete, humbled every major civilization in the galaxy, and solved the greatest mystery in known space by applying basic IT support principles. Yep. How does that make you feel? I thought about it, honestly. Vindicated. Every time someone's ignored my advice because I'm just the IT guy, every time someone's insisted on doing things the complicated way, every time someone said that ancient wisdom must be complex and mysterious, I gestured at the gate. This proves what I've always known. Sometimes the answer really is to check if it's plugged in. Profound, she said, and I genuinely couldn't tell if she was being sarcastic. As I was setting up the final security protocols, I found one more file, buried deep in the system, marked urgent with a timestamp from 10 million years ago. It was a support ticket, the last one ever filed on the network, ticket 9,999,999. I read aloud, submitted by Chief Engineer Torbanishu, forgot administrative password, request immediate reset, priority, critical. The response field was empty. The ticket had never been resolved. 10 million years. This engineer had locked themselves out, filed a ticket, and then presumably the civilization had collapsed before IT support could get back to them. I updated the ticket status, resolved user error, password reset completed. Please implement password manager going forward. Closing ticket. You're closing a 10 million year old support ticket, Keelix asked. Somebody had to. I hit submit. Besides, I'm the admin now. It's my responsibility. The Gates network pulsed with acknowledgement, accepting the ticket closure. Somewhere in the system, a 10 million-year-old alert finally cleared. So what now? Vaughn asked. We have access to the entire network. 247 gates connecting distant parts of the galaxy. The possibilities are endless. Now, I said, pulling up the network documentation. Now I read the manual, fix the bugs I can fix, document the ones I can't, and set up a proper maintenance schedule. Also, I'm creating user accounts for everyone with appropriate permission levels. Captain, you're getting standard user access. No offense. None taken, Vaughn said, sounding slightly offended. Oh, and I'm setting up a password manager for the network, enforcing regular password changes, and implementing security training for anyone who wants to use the gates. And, will this take long? Helmet interrupted. Proper IT infrastructure isn't something you rush. Professor, the first ones tried rushing it, and look what happened. As the crew dispersed to their various duties, I settled in for what would probably be weeks of work. Boring work. Tedious work. The kind of work that nobody writes legends about. But you know what? Someone had to do it. The first ones had built something incredible and then failed to maintain it. I wasn't going to make the same mistake. Besides, in 10 million years when this civilization collapsed and the next one came along, I wanted them to find proper documentation. Maybe a README file that started with, the password is not admin anymore. Stop trying. Here's the actual process for gaining access. Humanity's great contribution to galactic society wouldn't be weapons or philosophy or art. It would be basic IT support and a persistent refusal to accept that complicated problems always require complicated solutions. Sometimes the door is just locked. Sometimes the password is just admin.